Welcome to today's video. Now, today's video is going to be different ways of how you can cry on cue for camera. Now, if you probably know me, you will already know that I quite enjoy my dramatic, very emotional type roles. And this is something that I've been trying to continue to develop and improve my method of how I do get very emotional for certain scenes. And especially when you're under a lot of pressure, well, not a lot of pressure, but when it's obviously a very busy set and you don't have a lot of time to get in the zone and ready and be there to, get the money shot, as they say. I think one of the most common questions when it comes to very dramatic and emotional scenes is, how do you cry on cue? Of course, there are several different ways of how you can do this, and I think every actor has their own set of tools of what they use and how they get to that place. So today I wanted to share a starter pack, as you could say, of a variety of different methods of where you could start if you're interested in crying on cue for screen and if you're on your own and getting ready for your scene. So I do want to say that this is a process for most actors that they have to develop and, continue to work on until they start to become proficient and realistic in their performances. Now, I do want to say that this is a process for a lot of actors, that it can take time to develop this skill, and overall it just takes practice and patience. Take me for example. Even now I feel that I haven't fully perfected my performances when it comes to certain characterizations and different emotions, and every single time when I look back at one of my performances, I always find a point, or I can always see where I feel that I could have done better or things could have been different, and just reflected on the process and learn from what I can do for the next time, in my personal opinion, of looking more authentic and realistic and just completely truthful to the character. I think most of us, that's what we desire in our performances, especially when they're emotional. But it's all a learning process, and every film situation is an opportunity for you to practice your craft. So please don't get disheartened by your performances if it's not what you feel that you could have done, or, like me, feel that I can do so much more. It's okay. You have time to perfect it and just, keep working on it. So I'm going to go through a couple of different types of methods that you could use and, skills that can help you get to where you want just before you get on screen for your scene on your own. And just quickly, this is a little disclaimer. These are all my personal opinions, and I'm trying not to be biased and just listing off, what you can do, because everyone has their own preference, everyone has their opinions on certain things. But if I just kind of list the different options that you can use, you can figure out which ones are best for you and work for you. But I will try and tell you what I personally think of, what's the kind of safest and the healthiest way of getting there. Now, the first one, the biggest one that I think most people know, is emotional memory. As I said, you've probably heard of it, and I think personally in a lot of ways it's one that reflects most on method acting. But in a nutshell, what emotional memory is, you think of a memory, a specific feeling and emotion that you felt in a certain time of your life that you've previously gone through, and what you do is you essentially just relive that moment. You remember all the feelings, the thoughts that you were going through at that time. And of course, because we're going through mainly how to cry on cue, they're often very dramatic, upsetting moments of your life. So what you're doing is just recreating what you felt in that specific time of your life and then putting it into the character that you're playing right now. Now, the pros. Yes, of course, this can probably be quite an easy way of getting to that specific emotion quite quickly and efficiently, because you've been through it. You've literally lived that moment. You've experienced it. You've felt it. You've gone through that whole roller coaster of that moment. And the outcome is that it is often very realistic and truthful, because you are literally presenting what you felt back then to right now in that scene. But in my eyes, the biggest con to this specific method for upset and emotional scenes, is if you have a very intense, traumatic, or just an emotionally draining scene, I think for your mental health it's really detrimental, because I personally don't think that I could sustain that painful emotion for a long period of time, like whether it's for minutes, days, hours, weeks. Like, you do have to consider what type of scene it is and how long you're going to be filming it for, because yeah, that's a lot. And I just feel that reliving those emotions, I just wouldn't be able to realistically sustain that performance take after take after take. And just being able to get back to, you know, the first step of just when you're about to get to the, you know, for example, that big emotional outlet, I just wouldn't be able to keep retracting and getting back to that point, because I'll be too far gone. I would be down that rabbit hole, not in a really good headspace. And I know that for me, when they shout cut and it's the end of the day, whatever that moment that I was thinking of and recreating, it will stick with me after filming. I wouldn't be able to shrug it off, and yeah, I probably won't feel that great after filming. Also, just to consider, in a lot of scenes, it's never just one emotion. And I think it could be hard to pinpoint a specific moment in your time that you felt multiple different types of emotions in that one scene. For example, your emotional memory could be upset and grief. But in this scene for your character, it might be upset and anger. You know, in scenes, it's not just one emotion, it's just layers. There's so many different layers of thought process, emotions, and just things that are going on internally and externally. And I think realistically, it might be quite hard to pinpoint a moment that is exactly the same that you've lived through, that the characters live through for the scene. But I just wanted to say that now before, you know, you might get yourself into a very upsetting and probably not the healthiest zone if you didn't realise. Of course, like I said, this is my only one that I do have my personal opinion in it, but you know, you're probably 10 times stronger than me. In fact, I know you're 10 times stronger than me, and if you can deal with this sort of thing, you go for it. If it works for you, do it. But personally for me, for very traumatic or emotional scenes, this method isn't an enjoyable experience for me, but this method could be great for very uplifting and joyful scenes. So of course, it all depends on the type of the scene, but because we're focusing just on very emotional and crime ones, I don't like this one too much. And also, another quick thing, if you do use this method, that's perfectly fine. Do what you do. Just consider, if you haven't gone through that exact specific emotion or situation in the scene that you're required, having backups and alternative methods that you could use for it is always a great backup. Now, the second method is emotional connection. It sounds similar, but it is different. What it is you're imagining yourself in that situation if you were going through it to trigger your own feeling to it. Imagine if someone was about to say that they're going to break up with you. So just picture and feel what you would feel in that situation and go through the motion of the steps that you might think and feel if that was about to be said to you. But what it does is you're not having the personal connection to a situation that you have been through. So this can be a lot easier of getting you into that moment of your character in this situation and the thought process of what your character is feeling and about to feel. Third one is music. This method is one that I use quite often for a lot of my scenes. And this might be because, how do you say it? I can't think of the word. Yeah, whenever I hear music, it just gets to me. I think I can connect very easily to music and the type of emotion that it's trying to portray or the message that it's saying. You know, it doesn't matter what type of song. For me, it's connecting either to the beat, the melody, the lyrics, the narrative of the song. Like, if I start to feel a certain way to a particular song, I try to remember what I'm feeling in that situation, and I can save it into a certain playlist of different types of emotions it might help me portray. For example, obviously I can have a sad playlist, I might have a happy one, I might have a very loving one. You know, this is something that really helps me get into the moment, especially for emotional scenes. And yeah, it just helps me get into the zone. I've been quite fortunate to have certain productions that actually encourage listening to music, or they've picked out songs that they feel that tells the narrative of the story. So it helps me get an understanding of it and really feel what they are trying to present and portray. I love it when they give me a playlist. And if not, I just make one of my own. It just really connects with me. I don't know why. That's the thing. Throughout all of this, it's just finding something that really connects with you and you roll with it. But if you do try this method, what I would say is it's just focusing on the music, whether it's the melody, the certain instruments that are playing, or if it's specifically lyrics that resonate with the character and the scene. And I feel this method, particularly when you're on set, is a godsend. Like, you know, you've been on set, you know what it's like. It can be very noisy, it can be very busy, and there's 101 things that people are doing, and you know, they're doing their jobs. But for me, I can get so easily distracted by other people's stuff, or just wanting to try and help, or being too aware of like the time limits, the location, the situation, like whatever it is going on set. It's very easy for me to focus on, you know, what other people are doing. So listening to music and just internalizing and getting myself in my own head and my own body really helps me focus on what I'm about to do and not get too stressed and airy about other people's problems, essentially. I just need to focus on me and the job that I'm about to do. And as I said, just thinking about the character, and specific things that I also consider when I'm listening to music is the character's thought process, the objectives that they have, what just happened in the scene before, what do they want from the scene, things like that. It really helps me get into the zone and just, yeah, knowing exactly what I'm going into in this scene. And overall, just breathe when you're listening to music and let it completely take over and get you completely connected from your head, everything that's going on to here, and also into your body. That really helps me. The next one is the script. Now, what I mean by the script is to identify the overall tone and reason of why you're upset and emotional in the scene, and just to think that over. And once you know the overall tone and message of your character in the scene, is either picking a line or creating a line for your character of their overall feeling in this moment, and just to repeat it either internally or externally to ultimately trigger and set you off in that emotion that you are trying to feel. For example, say that your character's love of their life is about to walk out and you love them so much and you can't lose them. So your line could be for this scene is, I can't lose you. Having something that's very strong, specific and precise about how that character is feeling and what they want the most really helps to, you know, organically create that emotion. And as I said, either repeating it out loud or to yourself and just keep saying it over and over. I can't lose you. I can't lose you. I can't lose you. And just, you know, experiment a bit and let it take over you. But if they're comfortable with you saying it out loud, saying it to their face right there and then, I think it can really help you get into that scene and that emotion quickly, because you're letting that strong narrative and that focus to drive you through the scene. And I think ultimately, given that underlying reason of what your character's feeling and what they want, because again, all characters have so many different layers, I think it's about finding the right one for that character in that moment and just roll with it. And the last one is physical tools. Now, there's so many out there that you can use or try. You can purchase a crying stick. You can use the wind, or like fan your eyes and don't blink, and it will start getting you to well up and, you know, get those tear ducts working. You can use eye drops, you can use water, and if you really want to and you don't mind, you can even use an onion. It sounds so cliche, but I know people who actually do use this. Now, of course, don't judge people or, you know, think less of someone if they use these type of objects. It's just because sometimes you just need to get to that emotion there and then. You might be under such a time crunch, or personally, you just can't get to that place. You just can't get there. We're all human. We have our off days, and sometimes we just can't get to that point that we want, and it can be so frustrating. And the more, well, I find, the more I get frustrated and get annoyed with myself, the less likely I'm going to get to that moment. So this can be a great backup if all else fails and you still need to create the emotion that you need to, because you're still performing it in your voice. You can still probably literally hear what they're saying and you're probably expressing how you feel. But if they really want the tears and, you know, the emotions aren't enough, you can use physical stuff. I'm using my hands a lot, I'm sorry. But also a big factor that really helps with emotional scenes and for the audience to see literally what they're going through is makeup. Makeup can enhance a certain feeling, expression or situation that the character's going through, and it can really amplify it. And it can just make the whole scene and situation a lot easier for you just so much less pressure and stress, and you can hopefully enjoy the process and be a lot calmer in the scene. And you never know, by the amount that you are calm and you are focused on what you're doing, it might all come just naturally, and you'll be grateful that you didn't force it or overact, and which I've probably done. Well, I have done, I know I have, but yeah, I think it's all just about not thinking too much about I need to cry in this scene, because it's not all about crying. But when it's certain emotions, it's all just about the basics of the script, the character, the scene, the objectives, literally all of those sorts of things. That's what's important, and focusing on what your character needs and is trying to do. And I can honestly say it will just come naturally with it. So they're all of my little tools that you can use for trying to get into that very emotional scene with ease. Well, hopefully with ease. Again, some of them just take time and a bit of practice to be able to get there quickly. But for me, personally, I don't just use one of these techniques or, completely dismiss other ones. I think it all depends on the situation and the scene that's about to happen. I think it just depends on the situation that's happening on set and what you have to work with. Every day is different, every scene's different, and I think having a range of different tools that you can use, and you have your backup ones if they don't help, is so beneficial. So it allows you to not stress so much about that sort of thing. It actually allows you to completely focus on your character and your job. And for me, it's just finding techniques that allow me to portray very truthful and realistic emotions, because ultimately I think, all of us want, when we're doing very dramatic and emotional scenes, is for it to be believable, for it to be truthful. And if these certain methods help me get to that point and allow me to perform those emotions, that's all I want. That is the goal. And the truth is, when you're doing these types of scenes, it's just allowing yourself to be vulnerable and just giving it everything you've got. You can't overthink every single second and what you're going to do precisely at this point, at that point. You just have to let yourself live in the moment, be in that moment, and just perform through your character. Be your character. I know it sounds so cliche, but it is true. The only way for a truthful performance is if you are being that character. And sometimes the type of technique that you might use varies on the type of character you're playing. Sometimes it can be harder to connect with certain characters or scenes when you don't know how to connect with it, where it's so far from you as a person or your experiences or knowledge. It can, for me, sometimes be harder to get to a certain place where I literally have no possible attachment to it, and in my head too much. It can sometimes be quite hard, but then again, that's where your research and your pre-prep comes into to help make it easier. But yeah, sometimes there's just certain scenes and situations it's a lot easier for me personally to get to that point, to get to that emotion. And I don't know whether that's through experience or I don't know, I'm not sure. But yeah, it varies for everyone, so try not to be too hard on yourself. If you find it a lot more comfortable to do a certain emotion than the other, it's like that for everyone. We have that for everything. Yeah, everyone struggles with something within acting. It just depends on what it is for you. But once you've identified it, having these certain things, and especially if it's emotional stuff, having these different types of tools will again hopefully help you get there a lot easier. What I also want you to realise, that we all have our own tendencies and traits that come into characters naturally. And again, everyone's different, but I think your own traits and what triggers you or what doesn't, and what helps you get to certain places quicker and easier, helps you so much more in your preparation for any scene. And it allows, for me, it allows me to identify, what won't work for me, or what I feel that will be the best way for me to get there and is the most durable thing, especially if it's a very intense and traumatic scene. And of course, these can be the most challenging roles, and especially for me, they have been. And even now, when I look back at them, I know there's things I could have done differently, or I don't believe it. I think I'm just a bit harsh on myself, but at the end of the day, you want to walk off set feeling proud of yourself and knowing that you gave it all you could, and just enjoying the whole process, even though it could be the most intense and really serious scenes. you know, you're doing what you love, you're trying to tell a story, trying to portray a message to the audience, and that's what you should be thriving off. So always try and consider that when you get too wrapped up in your head like I do, and maybe stressing at that point that it's not happening. It's funny, it sounds so weird sometimes when I say it out loud to people, especially who aren't actors and things like that, that I say that I really enjoy very emotional scenes, but it's such a personal challenge for me, you know, to go to those certain areas and explore places I've never been before. And yes, I just really enjoy it, and it keeps me pushing and testing my abilities, because overall my goal is just to, as I said, try to connect with people and portray things that, you know, may help people, or I don't know what I'm trying to say. But yeah, you should overall enjoy it when you're doing emotional roles. That sounds, yeah. Thanks, babe. So I promise I will make another video down the line of going into different types of techniques a lot further, you know, exploring the practitioners who have made them, different styles, and, you know, where it all came from. I think it's so important to understand the history of how it was made to fully understand how you can present it. And once you start to get familiar with the start pack and you've tried to experiment, explore different types of ones, then you'll be able to start to combine different types of techniques and take it to that next level. And of course I'll give you examples and, you know, specific moments, what I've chosen and why I've chosen them for that moment in that scene and for that role, what my journey was, what I explored and trialed and errored, and overall just my personal traits that I have and know about, and so on. Like, there's so much more that you can go into it. Yeah, there's so much more you can still to explore, but I really hope that this video has given you a little bit of an understanding of different methods that you can use right now, and yeah, just start playing around. That's all acting is. I don't know what I'm doing. It's getting too late. Yeah, that's what it's all about. It's just trying different things, and overall that goal of creating something truthful and organic. But I hope you enjoyed this video and it's helped you a little bit. If it has, let me know in the comments, and if there's anything that you know that you use, let me know. I'd love to hear it. But that's enough for me. I hope you have a great day, evening, wherever you are, and take care and be safe. Bye.